Welcome to our few moments together on the Parsha. This Shabbos, we have the privilege of reading Parshas Shmini. It also happens to be Parshas Hachodesh, which of course means that we're going to be saying Mevorchim Hachodesh Nissan, and it's called Parshas Hachodesh because we're going to read from Parshas Bo, where it says, Hachodesh hazeh lochem Rosh Chodashim. This month is the first of all months. That's the way it's generally translated. We'll come back to that in a moment. Parshas Shmini itself begins with the words Vayehi Bayom Hashmini, and it was on the 8th day, Korah Moshe LaAaron Ulevanav. Moshe called to Aaron and his sons, Uleziknei Yisrael, and to the elders of Israel. Rashi comments that when it says it was the Yom Hashemini, on the special 8th day, that's because this particular 8th day, as Rashi says, Natal Asara Atoros, it took 10 crowns, one of them being, of course, that it was the first day of the month of Nissan, and it was the 8th day of the Miluim. The Miluim here refers to the days of the fulfillment of the setting up of the Mishkan. So it had 10 different crowns. You don't have to go through all of them. If you're interested, take a look at the Sifsei Chachamim, who so beautifully catalogs all of the 10 special qualities that the day had. The fact that it was called Yom HaShmini, the 8th day, in and of itself has a very important lesson for all of Klal Yisrael, because the number 8 in terms of days always implies lemala min hateva, more than the average. The average is a week of 7 days. 7 days is the life here on earth in each and every week. Once you go to the number 8, 8 is above and beyond what is colloquially referred to as a week. 8 implies something beyond the earthly. It's otherworldly. That's why the 8th day is the day of the Brit Milah, because it is an implication of something that's unique. And whenever we talk about the 8th means something much, much higher, including Shmini Atzeres, where the massacre took place. And this is an entire challenge to the Jewish people to live on a higher plane of self-improvement in order to fight against the basest, lower than 8 instincts of man, especially the evil that lurks in the souls of man. And the Jewish people are enjoined to be higher than that, to go to the 8th level, to the level that's beyond the simple earthly ways. Of course, the nations of the world, and especially the evil members of the world, have no inkling of this, but we certainly have an indication of what 8 implies, especially when it refers to the Parsha as Yom HaShmini, because that was the setting up of the heavenly kingdom of Hashem on earth in the form of the first Beis Hamikdash. Now, it wasn't literally a Beis Hamikdash, but it was the temporary Mishkan in the Midbar that went with the Jewish people up until the building of the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, when it says the Parsha of Hachodesh hazeh lochem Rosh Chodashim, when we're talking about Parshas Hachodesh, we're talking about the new moon. Most people would translate the word Chodesh as month, but as Rav Shamshua Farrell Hirsch points out, the word Chodesh really comes from the word Chadash. Chadash means new. And what we have to recognize is that when we read Hachodesh hazeh lochem Rosh Chodashim, what we're saying is this renewal of the moon catching the light of the sun, just as the moon catches the light of the sun and reflects it to us here on earth, so too the Jewish people, HaChodesh HaZeh Lachem, this renewal of the catching of the light of the sun and reflecting it is lochem, is for you, the Jewish people, Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of all renewals. Just like the moon catches the light of the sun and reflects it to the earth, so do the Jewish people catch the light of the Torah, of Hashem, and reflect it back to the earth in the form that other human beings can recognize the beauty that lurks within the spirit of the human being. Back in the pasuk that we spoke about in Shmini, where it says that Moshe told Aaron and his children, and the Ziknei Yisrael, Rashi is a little bit concerned about why did you have to tell the Zikanim, and he offers an interpretation that the reason he had to tell the Zikanim was so that nobody should say that Aaron usurped the leadership of the Kohen Gadol, and that it was somehow related to the nepotism of the king of Moshe Rabbeinu, but rather the Zikanim, the elders, were the ones who appointed Aaron, and everybody in the Jewish people was assuaged to know that the Zikanim were the ones who chose Aaron. Interesting that when it comes to Zikanim, the word Zakain means elder or aged. Where is the first time in the Torah that we find that someone aged? We go in Parshas Parshas and Noach, we see that people lived very long lives, and then they died, they expired, and they are no longer on the world. Where is the first case of a human being developing a system where he or she aged? So if you'll take a look, you'll see it says, Va'avram Zakein Bo Bayomim, it's Parshas Chayesara, V'Hashem Beirachas Avram Bakol. Avraham became elderly, he was coming in days, and Hashem blessed him with all things. The Gemara in Bava Metzia brings down, I believe it's Pei Zion, it brings down that Ad Avram lo hoya zikna, until Avraham became aged, there was no such thing as someone who was old. This created a little bit of a problem, especially when it came to Avraham and Yitzchak, because Avraham and Yitzchak were so alike that the Gemara says that if somebody wanted to come and speak to Avraham and get his sage advice, the sage who was elder, they couldn't tell the difference in appearance between Avraham and Yitzchak. They looked so much alike. He was exactly the same. Age did not show on Avram's face. So, Misha Rotza Luishtai Bahade Avram, if somebody wanted to go speak to Avram, Mishtai Bahade Yitzchak, he would end up speaking to Yitzchak because he didn't tell the difference in their facial appearances. And the same thing if somebody wanted to go call on Yitzchak, the youngster, maybe he wanted to say, hey, Yitzi, how about coming out and playing a game of ball? But Avram looked the same way, and all of a sudden, they would come and say that to Avram, which the world would not have been able to exist properly. And Avram recognized this. There's a discussion about exactly why that is so, but the fact is, if two people look exactly alike, and you want to get the sage advice, how do you know who's older? So Avram told Hashem, this is not going to bring cover to the world, and there's going to be a problem. So fix this. And Hashem said, you came up with some good ideas over here, Hashem said, and you will be the first one who will age. And this way, when they want to speak and get your sage advice, because you, Avram, have lived through life, and you had the experiences of life, and you now understand that what's really important in life can be emphasized. So people who would want sage advice are going to come to the sage, the elderly one. And so Avram was the first one who aged. We, the Jewish people, say in Tehillim, and we also say it on the Aseret Yemei Tshuva and Avinu Malkeinu, right? In the prayers that we say when we say Shema Kolenu, we say Al Tashlichenu Le'es Zikna. Don't cast me away to an old age. What does that mean? Do you know anybody who doesn't want to reach an old age? Everyone wants to be old. All right, we don't want to be infirm and we don't want to be sick, chas v'shalom, but we want to live a long life. We don't want that we should never grow old. Never growing old, the alternative is not being alive. None of us want that. So what do we mean when we say, Al tashlicheni le'is zikna? Don't cast me aside to the time of elderly old age. I've had experience over the years that I've taught a lot of young people. I taught in the high school in Yeshiva in Elizabeth for over 50 years, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. They became my Talmidim for life, and even when they were 19, 20, and 25, 30. And there were many times when we had discussions and we would talk about self-improvement. We would speak about getting better, improving our lives. And a lot of times people said, Rabbi, I can't change. I'm so used to my way. I'm so set in my ways. I can't possibly change. There are people who go to doctors and the doctors say, you really have to change your way of living because it's causing you to become unhealthy. Your blood pressure is out of sight. You're way overweight and your heart can't tolerate it. You really have to take better care of yourself. And the person says, Doctor, I've tried, but I'm so old. I'm so used to it. I can't possibly change. And the doctor says, you don't change, this is going to become a disaster. And people very often claim that they're too old to learn new tricks. You don't have to learn new tricks. We're not talking about making tumble sauces when you're 85 years old. We're talking about self-improvement of a spiritual nature. And that's not too great a challenge. You don't have to jump through hoops. All one needs to do is make small incremental steps. And so when we say in the davening, Al tashlicheni la'es zikna, what we're saying, Hashem, please don't cast me aside to the point where I feel I can't get better. Because the truth is, no matter how old we are, we can improve. And it's not such a great challenge. When I mentioned this to someone recently, he said, people who are older are afraid because they're afraid to try new things. Yeah, if you're walking very delicately and it's hard for you to keep your balance, and then you tell him to go run the mile, of course he's going to say, I can't possibly do that. But when we're talking about something that is for your benefit, and it requires no more than your inner desire to make small incremental improvements in your spiritual nature, and it's not something to be afraid of. On the contrary, it's something to be lifted up by. Have you ever met someone who neglected to daven every day or to put on tefillin, and all of a sudden they got a spiritual awakening and began to keep Shabbos, began to daven? These people are ecstatic with their improvement. It's not something to run away from. And consequently, when it says, Al tashlicheni le'es zikna, what we're really saying is, don't make me so that I can't possibly think to improve. Hachodesh hazeh lachem, this renewal is for you, Rosh Chodashim, the beginning of all renewals, and we can get better. And that's why Moshe spoke to Aaron and to his children and to the Ziknei Yisrael. And it was on the 8th day, because they were going to raise themselves up beyond the simple and the mundane. They were able to improve their spirituality. And so Shmini and Parshas Hachodesh are inexorably intertwined. And they bring to us the concept that as we get closer to the Yom Tov of Pesach, the Yom Tov of freedom, we can break through the bonds of slavery that have kept us in inertia without the ability to somehow get a little bit better. Small steps, small little things that make our life so filled with meaning, especially in terms of the performance of mitzvahs and getting closer to Hashem. So there we have a fabulous and important statement that is reflected by Avraham Avinu, who wanted to look like an old person, but he didn't get old in terms of his ability to grow. And that's something we can do too. And so when we come to Parshas Hachodesh and to Parshas Shmini, we have the great opportunity to become improved, better, a new version that is without danger and without the possibility of falling, but rather the ability to straighten up and to become stronger and better as members of Klal Yisrael. And we hope and pray that that's what will happen to our people now, so that we can see a time where there's a geula once again, just like B'Nissan Nigalu and B'Nissan Asidim Ligael, we will once again be redeemed. I want to take this opportunity to wish a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat Shalom and Mevorchim, and to have a wonderful Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chodashim. This newness is the newness that is the first of all new things in the rest of our lives. Shabbat Shalom u'Mevarach, and Chodesh Tov.